All right, it's 9:31. Yep, let's call to order the meeting of the Louisiana State Uniform Construction Code Council, Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. You got a roll call, Ms. Tara?
Good morning. Jason Aycock,
Here.
Juliet Cassain,
Present.
Trent Clark,
Here.
Jackie Didakis,
Here.
Jay Dufour,
Here.
James Edwards,
Here.
Fritz Embaugh,
Here.
Andre Ford, Ken Jones,
Here.
Brian Noss,
Here.
Nick LeBlanc,
Here.
Pat McCormick,
Here.
PJ Odom,
Here.
Rodney Taylor,
Here.
Charles Visser, Michael Witch.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Pat, if you could lead us in that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's move into item A, consideration of the January 6, 2026 meeting minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those? Any comment on those? Any comment from the public? I'd like to entertain a motion.
Motion to
by
accept
Mr.
minutes.
Embaugh. So moved.
Second, Jones.
And I'm sorry, that came from Mr. Dufour?
Jones.
Oh, Mr. Jones in the end. You're going to vote, please. Do we need one for the minutes? All right, all in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, let's move to item B of our agenda. Welcome and introduction, Mr. Brad Hassert, Executive Director.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. You have a fairly short agenda on paper, but I think that you're going to find there's a lot of discussion points today. I would just ask that you try not to get too deep in the weeds, or we will literally be here for 3 days. So let's work through that as best as we can. Certainly that the draft of proposed legislative changes that you all should have received is it's not complete. There's really no way for it to be complete until we can get some discussion points through here, and you'll get a update on that as it moves forward. Quick discussion that we had this morning is that draft needs to be filed in 24 days. So let's all participate as rapidly as we can, bearing in mind that there's a lot of things that I think all of us want to correct, clean up, or change. We're probably not going to get all that this year. So if we can concentrate on the most important things to build a framework, I think that'll be better for you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. All right, we'll move on to item C, public comment. Any non-agenda items need to be brought in from the public? Please state your name for record.
My name is Anna Galassi. I'm a principal at Seisler Thompson Burn Architects. I'm also a certified healthcare architect, certified by the American College of Healthcare Architects, and I've practiced healthcare architecture for over 20 years, and I'm here today to advocate to you guys that the state look at updating the healthcare code. Currently, we are enforcing the FGI 2014. It's very outdated. I think most people know that healthcare evolves very quickly, and that the processes that happen in healthcare, that they are ever changing, and being on such an old code really is problematic for creating correct spaces that care for patients correctly without having to go through hoops to file for variances for things that are the way they are now for the current codes. So we are 2 codes behind, and they're about to adopt a third. I thought that I wanted to mention that we are going to have a couple of healthcare conferences, the Healthcare Design Conference and the PDC in the fall and the spring of next year. And a lot of the learning opportunities there are going to address things that we can't do here in Louisiana because our codes are so outdated. So I just want to advocate. I wrote up a little page that lets you know what the differences are in the code. I think that the thought is that the code gets stricter over time. It doesn't get stricter over time. It gets more fine-tuned. In some cases, it actually gets more, I wouldn't say lax, but doesn't require things that would be generic for certain spaces. Because it's fine-tuned, you would only need certain requirements for spaces that are done certain ways. The code that we're currently on is only 2 books. The newer codes are 3 books. We've separated out the code for residential care, which are nursing homes. Before, nursing homes were treated pretty much like hospitals. It referred back to hospitals, and that's not really the way we want to treat nursing homes. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind, and I'm not sure what the process is to get this updated, but we've spoken with others, and I just don't know, but I do think that this is a very important thing for our state and for the way that we care for our patients in our healthcare institutions.
Thank you, Ms. Anna. I'm not sure that the oversight of that's going to come from this council specifically.
Okay.
I think that runs through the State Fire Marshal's office for that. There are some representatives from the State Fire Marshals here on that.
Okay.
And we certainly will accept any correspondence you want to send in on it. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to help the speaker to find the correct place for that and share the information if that's
That'd be
okay
great.
with you. And I'll get with her in a little bit.
Thank you, Ms. Tassert.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
there any other-
Director, I'd be willing to meet with her because all that stems from the CMS guidelines. So, and all that comes through us.
James, I'll make sure we facilitate some
Thank you.
discussion with that. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment for any other non-agenda items? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to our unfinished business. Item D on the agenda, IBC Chapter 11 Accessibility. Specifically, I want to discuss Rule 103 in the IBC. I think all of you are aware we've had a series of discussions up to this point of the changes necessary by the state legislature for our ADA requirements. And we've all kind of discussed the necessity for consistency from this council and then also from the state as well. So we've worked with the State Fire Marshal's Office. The IBC is currently under review, which includes Chapter 11. So Rule 103 is specific to Chapter 11. And what it does essentially is it keeps the current standards in place until the new standards are adopted. So didn't want to cherry pick certain components to change within the code without considering the holisticness of the code and how we change things individually. And so this Rule 103 specifically does that. Brad, do we need to read this for the record? The rules are it's published in front. Okay, perfect. And so just the pertinent information to make sure everybody understands is that it allows for the council to adopt all specific sections of Chapter 11 during the review period. It adds language to repeal the current sections. And again, the language added to it is until such time 24 edition of the code is adopted for use, commercial buildings shall be permitted to comply with the requirements of the 2010 ADA standards and accessible design by the Department of Justice. So again, it keeps the existing requirements in place while we review the code with the expectation of a January 1st enforcement of the new standards within Chapter 11 that the council is currently reviewing. Mr. Witch, you had a comment?
I just wanted to make a motion to adopt the proposed language to amend Rule 103.
Okay, motion by Mr. Witch, seconded by Ms. Didakis. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, if I could interrupt just a moment for the record. Mr. Beck, could you note that Mr. Visser did arrive and he is present? I know you saw it, just for the record. Mr. Visser did arrive shortly after the pledge.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move to a new business section of our agenda, specifically on the LHBA support for wind mitigation task force. From the public to speak on this. Please name and address for the record, please.
Bruce Laburn. I'm a retired, officially, as of a few weeks ago, retired builder. I do sit on the senior board with the HBA in Greater New Orleans. The request before this council today is being made to benefit Louisiana. It's not it's not motivated by personal financial gain for the HBA, for the Wind Mitigation Task Force or for me personally. It's about Louisiana. And I'm going to put some things in front of you today to make that point clear. Our homeowners are overcome with the insurance premiums that are not affordable anymore. This is reflected by the outmigration that we all are hearing about, the newspaper articles that we're constantly reading, and the poor roofing practices from the past are the blame. This includes the application of the roof, permitting, inspections, all of that. And Louisiana is engaged, you all know this, in correcting this problem, and that's why we're here today. There are 677,000 homes in the high wind zone that are exposed to the threat in Louisiana. This is the legislative auditor's report from about a year ago. 62% of the housing stock, existing housing stock in Louisiana, is under this threat. And the epicenter, I call it, for the insurance crisis really is in southeast Louisiana, where the concentration of the housing is the greatest, and they are in the high wind zone. What is Louisiana doing? We've got Act 239 now that requires statewide roofing permits. We've got Act 422 that tightens the contractor licensing requirements, including roofers, brought on by the Licensing Board for Contractors. We've got Act 25 that allows photographic documentation, geotagging, for roofing inspections. Even the Fortified Roof Grant Program in Louisiana depends upon and requires permits for roofing, inspections, and documented compliance with the code. Specific language is all in the Regulation 126. Now, this council has the authority granted by, and that's part of what you've seen in our application, revised statute 40, that states the council has the authority for granting specialty registrations. The Codes Council website itself lists the qualifications for the wind mitigation surveyors as registrants, which shows the wind mitigation surveyors as qualified. And our mission is to seek to help this council and to help Louisiana with what we all know is a coming demand, which will surge. It's huge. The law requires permits. When you open a permit, you need to inspect it, and you need to document it so that you can prove it was done correctly. We're here to help this council and the state of Louisiana. We must continue to work together to collectively find that solution that Louisiana can afford. This is not about financial gain for any one individual or group. It is about Louisiana. This is about finding what I call the Louisiana solution, something that Louisiana homeowners can afford. Please remember, there are 677,000 homes at risk here. It's the highest percentage outside of only Florida in any state. We need a solution that Louisiana can afford, and that's what the Wind Mitigation Survey group is all about. We do have a couple guys here that are our co-chairs. They both signed this application after the vote was taken, a unanimous vote of the licensed registrants. Ashley Vandermeulen is easily the most energetic and visible today, present all the time in our area, southeast Louisiana, talking to citizens group constantly, continuing education. And then we've got Bill Hatchett, who is easily the most senior. He was there in the beginning in 07. Bill's done tens of thousands of inspections over the years. So we've got the most experienced. I don't want to say the oldest, because I'm damn near as old as he is. But we've got Bill and Ashley here to answer any technical questions that y'all might have. I see this as really very simple. We're here to help. And I hope you can recognize that's our mission. So I wish I could move that you adopt this. Somebody up there needs to do that, but that's what I think you should do.
Ms. Bruce, first, thank you for coming and speaking to this commission. And also, thank you for your service to the state of Louisiana. I do think that this is certainly something worth considering, this commission. Currently, we're in some discussions of trying to sort out the wind mitigation survey qualifications. There's been kind of some generalized practice compared to some statute and compared to some rulemaking. And there seems to be a little bit of gray that I believe we're in the process of clarifying. I think as that's clarified as to what those qualifications are, right? Is it a home inspector with the wind class? Is it a building official? Is it an architect engineer? As we clarify that component, I think that would be the most appropriate time to vote to put this in, because I do agree with you. We have a tremendous amount of housing stock that is very vulnerable. We need to make sure we can get roofs on quickly, safely, and document that for the insurance industry so that we can see the discounts that we deserve as we're doing a higher standard. But I think that we need to define the wind mitigation surveyor a little bit cleaner first, so that we can have the discussion of qualifying them to do the residence roof inspection. From my perspective as a building official, I agree with you. I think that if you can come in and tell me with the roof decking, the nailing pattern, the strapping system that's in place, and the underlayment, you've completed a roof inspection. So I think there's a common sense connection between the two. We just need to get the definition straight, I believe, of wind mitigation so that we can have that specialty certification applied to it and have that discussion as a body.
I certainly do. I'm aware of that, and I understand that, and Ashley has been working with that as well. So he's going to come up probably and answer some other questions on this. But what I don't want really, it's up to this board to make the decision. I want you to remember that this group of guys and ladies, 33 presently registered, they're in people's attics every day. And that's what they're seeing. They're there. And I'm told don't quote prices because, well, I'm not even in that business. I'm not going to become a wind mitigation. I'm in retirement. But it's running, if they're close by to the surveyor, $300 to go into the attic, go into the house, do the proper required documentation that the insurance carriers want to read and see, and then issue the discount that's afforded and required by law now. The LDI's website publishes what those discounts are. So Louisiana's making giant strides forward, and we might be here a little bit early, perhaps, because what's not in place yet is how is Louisiana going to handle statewide permitting. That's really where the frontier is.
Sure.
But we're here to say we want to help, and I believe this group is the authority that could say you're qualified.
We appreciate it. Again, I don't disagree with you in that sense. I just think that as we're, again, clarifying what that qualifying party is, then create a sub-registration of that or a specialty registration of that, that again would give them the ability to do those inspections just as we clean that process. It just may not be the time for a vote today is what I'm getting at. But I am, from my position, in agreement with you that that is a very reasonable ask, and it makes sense as the industry is changing with the legislation changes.
Okay, thank you. If you would, I'd like to request. Sorry.
May I ask a question? In addition to suggestions around qualifications, has your task force made suggestions around updating the certificate itself?
Yes. In fact, that's very near to completion. We've been working closely. Ashley's leading this mostly, but yes, the form is being refined, has been reviewed by the Wind Mitigation Task Force. As it currently stands, there were a few comments last month's meeting. We meet every month. And by the way, I want to interject this very quickly. Building officials are also authorized, if they register with this council, they're authorized to conduct a wind mitigation survey. So are architects, if they register. So are engineers, if they register. And they're not registering for the most part.
I agree.
I just want to note that when you have your suggestions, since we are in our 2027 code review cycle, it would actually be helpful for you to at least pass that along to our IRC
Certainly.
committee to look at.
Absolutely, we will.
I think we all acknowledge that certificate has not been touched in about
Some of these guys, some of these guys are skilled where they can do stuff on their phone while they're driving. So you'll get that today.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Any other comment from the public? All right, we're going to move on to our next agenda. Thank you again, Mr. Bruce. We appreciate your time, your effort, and your service to the state of Louisiana. All right, if we could move forward to agenda item F, which is presentation by our new general counsel, Mr. Kevin Landrenet. Mr. Landrenet, the floor is yours.
So, thank you, and happy to to present to you and work as your general counsel. I've been the board counsel, I want to say, about 8 years now for the Licensing Board for Contractors. And now that this group has come under kind of the boards or into the board's area, I'm going to serve as your general counsel. And Chairman, I'm not really sure exactly what you need for me to explain here today, but my general understanding was, as we go through this process of modifying and reenacting new statutes for this whatever we're going to call it, commission, council, code commission, that we need to go through a process, and for the commission to understand what is happening, and we did it for the board. When the board has, the licensing board has had many changes over the last 5 or 6 years, and one of them was a repeal and replacement of statute, and a move from rule and regulations into statute, and then and also continuing with rules and regulations. And so, in doing that, you need to enact statutes that are general and broad enough to use rules and regulations to enforce or enact the requirements as the legislature has required of this commission. So sometimes, and as you may know, the legislature can only submit so many statutes and so many changes either every year or every 2 years. And because legislators can only put forth so many new statutes in 1 year, like 5 per legislator, and then another year, unlimited amounts, sometimes it takes a long time if you're in statutes. Whereas when you're doing rules and regulations, you can move a lot quicker. And so in reenacting and moving forward with our statutes, what we want to do is make statutes and move from rule to statutes, things that we think should be in statute, but also leave those statutes broad enough to where we can, for purposes of enforcing our statutes, do it through rules and regulations that we can move quicker and allow this commission to change and move forward at a faster pace to enact codes, whether they be international building codes, whether they be whatever codes we want to use and standards. We can do it through rules and regulations quicker than we do at this current pace. And also in our statutes, what we want to do, and in some rules and regulations, is put into statute and actually put in rules and regulations that essentially force this commission to act quicker and in response to codes and changes to codes. And I think that was mentioned about the healthcare code, which might not fall under us, but if an international building code changes, we don't want to, in Louisiana, we shouldn't be 3 codes behind, or we shouldn't be 2 codes behind. We should be quicker in enacting. And what happens is those things don't happen because sometimes we have to make that change by statute and go to the legislature and get that approval process, and it could take 2 or 3, even 4 years. And in some cases, what we've found is that our committees aren't meeting quick enough to get that done, and we want to put in statute that we're going to move these things quicker, and that we're going to, for the purposes of protecting the health, safety, and of the public, we need to move quicker. And so that's kind of what our process is going to be: is to create statute, and what we can move from rules and regulations to statute, we will, and what we can leave in rules and regulations, we will. But we're going to make changes to all of those things. Mr. Chairman, is there anything more that you wanted to you think you would like to address specifically, or maybe Mr. Hassett might have some things that you want to address more specifically?
Not specifically necessarily with your end. Just want to make sure we had introductions to the board and kind of explain where we are in some of these processes with it. I think in a few moments we're going to move. When we get past G into item H, we'll talk a little bit about some of the revised statutes and get some comments from you on as we move through that process. But I just want to make sure that the board, our commission rather, was familiar with you, and that if they had any questions or concerns, they could bring them up.
Mr. Chair, I think Ms. Cassane was the driving force for having Mr. Landreneau here today. I just want to make sure her concerns or questions have been addressed as far as
I just
how
was
rule
hoping
works
that Mr. Landreneau could speak a little bit to rulemaking in particular, so that all of the members of the council understand the distinction between the legislative statutes, the revised statutes, which have to go through the legislature for amendment, and the administrative code, which is where the rules are found, and the process for amending the rules, such as we did today with the amendment to Rule 103. And so just the timing of those and a little bit about the administrative code and how that is advertised, effectuated, if you could just speak a little bit to that, just for everyone's clarification.
Yeah, so statute, obviously you have to go through the legislative process, get it approved by a committee in the legislature, and then if the committee lets it come, if the committee allows it out of committee, then it goes before the legislature and it goes before both houses, and there's debate, and it can be debated in committee, and then it can come out of committee and go to the legislature for approval, and it goes to both houses, and so that's where that happens, and so that can take time. It also can be killed in committee. What rules and regulations are, as you hear, as you did today, you approved a rule change. That rule change has been approved here. It then goes and into the register. It gets submitted out for public comment. After the public comment period ends, it can then go into rules and regulations and it's enacted. So it's a lot quicker and can happen more often. It used to be that there were restrictions on where rules and regulations could be submitted every year. The legislature has changed that, so we can do rules and regulations more often, and we can submit them more often. Again, there is a public comment period, and I can't remember if it's 30 days or 60 days now. But that after that public comment period ends, then it can be enacted into rules and regulations. And so it's a lot quicker. We don't have to go through the whole process. And it allows this commission to act quicker to changes in the code and to put it into rule as opposed to put it into statute. And typically, what you want in statute is something that allows this commission to react quicker to changes in code, as opposed to be restricted by statute as to when you can reenact changes to code. And so that's the reason for rules and regulations and how it's different from the legislative process. It doesn't stop the public to have public comment. They give a period for public comment, and then depending on what that public comment is as to whether or not those rules and regulations will go forward. And so that's generally the process. Anybody have other questions about that? And again, that's all through the Louisiana Administrative Procedure Act, and the Louisiana Administrative Procedure Act kind of governs how that whole process goes through. And in statute, when we enact the statute, it will state in our statutes that we are to follow the Louisiana Administrative Procedure Act. And so we're not doing anything that's strange to the generally accepted practice in the state in moving rules and regulations forward.
Does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Thank you again, sir. All right, let's move on to item G, council bylaws. Mr. Hassett, do you want to speak on this?
No, but I will.
Will you? Will you?
I think all of you at this point have seen the bylaws that are currently in place. I'm hoping that we all share similar sentiments about them, that they may be a little bit redundant, restrictive, and outdated. It is my suggestion that during our proposed legislative changes forthcoming, that we essentially get rid of all of existing bylaws, as most of those that are in play now are either covered by an existing statute elsewhere or covered by APA. And some of them just absolutely don't make any sense to me whatsoever. And I think it's in statute, particularly the disciplinary issues that are in there, that I find to be troubling. That if I'm correct, it is in bylaw, that there's essentially a pre-discipline committee to determine whether there shall be charges or not brought against a building official. And then those charges would be brought before the council in whole, of which the pre-disciplinary committee is a part of. That's I think, a legal challenge in itself. I don't know that would really work very well for you guys. So please consider repealing those, and anything that you find to be important in there, let's talk about that and make sure it's already covered in statute, or we put it in statute and or rule. I can tell you and again, I know you're tired of hearing it, but the only reference that Kevin and I truly have, and Kevin may have some more, he's represented some other boards in the past, the Contractors Board, which represents 33,000 contractors and brings about 3,000 disciplinary matters a year, we don't have a single bylaw. Everything is covered in statute and rule. It's been very clear. There's never been a challenge to any of that. We've never lost a court case. We've never lost an appeal in my 10 years here. And it's not because we're great or we're wonderful. I think it is because we try to follow the letter of the law, whether it's statute or rule. And I don't think the council in the past has necessarily gone down that route, maybe because of the confusion between bylaw and rule and statute. That's my recommendation and my hope. That's what I have to say about bylaws. I don't like what y'all have, and I think it's very restrictive and damaging to this council.
And from what I'm understanding, not necessary, right? It's very rare for a public body to have a bylaws as a public body.
I mean, some of the bigger public, LSU has got bylaws for everything in the world, but I mean, their $780 gajillion budget and their millions of employees, I think, dictate a few things that are very different than what you guys are here. You regulate roughly 400 people, give or take. The code is the code. The code isn't in a position to be challenged other than at the public forums where the public can make their comments and their beliefs about what it should be, but it's what you pass. But some of your things in the bylaws are already covered in statute, and there are 2 or 3 of them that are very apparently in opposition to statute. So I think that they probably were very well intended when they came into play, but that's been 20 years ago, y'all, and things need to be updated a little bit.
And I'll say that I agree with Brad that I'm not sure why, and probably some of you weren't even on this board or commission when the bylaws were created. And as you look at it, as I've seen the bylaws, they were revised 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times in 1 year. And that's kind of crazy in and of itself that they were revised 9 times. The statute itself will define how this commission is to be governed, and there is no reason to have a separate bylaw section, in my opinion, to govern a commission that is already provided by statute. And by statute is how this commission should be governed, which is how the licensing board is governed, and most boards and commissions are governed by statute and rules and regulations. And so the purpose of this commission, as it would be established as the legislature requires it to be established. And what you are supposed to do as a commission will be defined by statute, and your purpose to facilitate that purpose. If it's not in statute, you can do it by rules and regulations. You don't need a separate bylaw. So now you have a statute, you have rules and regulations, and you have bylaws. And it's almost a way to challenge each one of, if someone came up here and said, hey, your bylaw says this, your rules and regulations says this, and the statute says this, and that, so how will you react to that? Well, really what you should say is, I have a statute, and I have rules and regulations, and they're all consistent. And you can, if you want to change a rule and regulation that conflicts with your bylaws, then you have to go change your bylaws too. So I don't see it's redundant, and I don't see it's necessary. So I think that we're going to go through that process as we modify the statutes and the rules and regulations. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
That was the point I was going to make, up since we're looking to essentially rewrite the revised statute that addresses how we operate. This probably would be easily folded into that process. But do you have the existing statute that's in place presently that would point to where the redundancy exists between the current bylaws and the current statute?
I don't have that right now in front of me. However, the redundancy would be, how many people are on the commission? How many times do you meet? What is the You can just look in the special, has special meetings, regular meetings. How do you hold regular meetings? Well, that should all be in statute and rule. It shouldn't be governed by the bylaws. And so how many members are going to serve on the commission? That should have, why you have absences, why, those things. How the governor appoints, that should all be by statute. And it is by statute. So that's a redundancy. And so what ends up happening is you have a redundancy in just basic ways that the commission is to be run, and it's also in bylaws. That shouldn't be the case. It should be, and some of them currently conflict. And how many people should be on any commission? What are subcommittees? How should subcommittees be run? Well, that's a redundancy. You don't need to have that type of redundancy. Let's see, minutes. How minutes are handled. You don't need that redundancy. Duties of the chair. I mean, you don't really have to have all those specific requirements as a bylaw. If you want there to be specific rules, then put them in rules and regulations. Don't put them in bylaws. Because, in reality, are bylaws enforceable laws? I'm not really sure. Did the bylaws ever go before? Did they go through the rules and regulations as required by the Administrative Procedure Act? I'm not sure if that actually happened. I haven't gone back and looked at that. But those, again, can go through rules and regulations as opposed to just creating bylaws within the business agendas. All of those, most of what I see in here, I know that the board, the Licensing Board for Contractors has been able to run successfully without all these bylaws in here. So I just suggest that you just do it through actual statute and rules and regulations and not have a redundancy of another rule or quasi-rule.
Thank you. Any other comment from the commission? Any comment from the public? All right, we're going to move on to our next agenda item. We're going to look at our commission proposed revised statutes. Yes, sir, Mr. Hassert.
Mr. Chair, may I suggest that we add something to the agenda before we get into that lengthy conversation? And that is a little clarity that I think has been asked this week about wind mitigation surveyors, about who can and who can't. You can add that to the agenda with the approval of the council.
Sure. I'd like to add that to the agenda that we discussed. Where do we add it within the agenda? Brad, help me.
I think that the proper motion might be to add to the agenda a discussion of the current qualifications versus past practices of the council of allowing certain individuals to serve as a wind mitigation surveyor, both in the public sector and in the private sector.
Move to do that. Second. Second by Mr. Witch. Is that accurate? And then I need a full vote of the council. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes. Added to the agenda. Would you like to lead this discussion, or would you like me to?
I would. I'd like to just get into it just a little bit, and I'm going to back up. It's not a secret. I don't know a whole lot about building code nor wind mitigation. I have a rough idea what it is, but I do see with some discussions that have been held with the Department of Insurance and with, I guess, the council, meaning me, about moving forward with clarifying some of their language. One of the sticking points that I have is the Department of Insurance has a rule that I'm struggling with still to get a little clarity on. It says who can fill out the form, essentially. And it is very vastly different than our rules that say who can be a wind mitigation surveyor. I think that we could find anybody walking down the street who's capable of filling out the form, but that doesn't certify them by the council standard of who is a wind mitigation surveyor. This came to light to be brought to the agenda from a question from a building official who initially didn't recognize was a public building official. How does he become a wind mitigation surveyor? So we went back and forth with him, and there was some discussion, if you will, of what requirements are to be met. It seems like there's, and maybe Mr. Witch can help me with this, or somebody else, there seems to be some differences between what's a private or third-party wind mitigation surveyor by rule and what is a public wind mitigation surveyor by rule. And I guess in the interest, especially since Ashley's here, And Ashley's been involved in a lot of those discussions as well to clean up the form and their practices and create some training. He actually wants y'all to give him some money to finish the training, but I told him you don't have any money. So maybe we can get to that at a later point. But just for everybody's knowledge, I just think it would be clear if y'all discussed how you wanted to handle that, hopefully within the guidelines of rules and regulations. And I'm going to get out and let Mike handle that.
Mr. Witch.
Yeah, just to, I guess, give a little bit more background. So years ago when this was done, I was at the meetings. I wasn't on the council, and they certainly came up with the requirements for a private wind mitigation surveyor. But it was also said at that time, although I do not believe it's reflected in the rule, that building code enforcement officers, meaning jurisdictional employees that have the B1 certification or greater, are able to also perform these surveys. So at South Central Planning, we've actually been performing them for years. It's not something we advertise, and quite honestly, it's a money loser for us. But we do it in an attempt to try and help some people, especially initially when there weren't very many wind mitigation surveyors out there. It really doesn't make a difference to me if we can continue doing that or not. I'm not here to fight for that or not fight for it, but as Brad said, if you look on LDI's website, it clearly states a building code enforcement officer can do it. But our rules don't state that. It's silent, actually, other than if you're a third-party wind mitigation surveyor. So, the question came about from a different building official. I'm not sure if he was looking to become a private wind mitigation surveyor and have a side business, or if he was looking to do it on behalf of the parish that he works for. He happened to ask me the question. I told him I thought you could do it because we've been doing it for years and they've been accepted. But digging further into it, and Brad is correct, it's not clear, at least in the rules. It was to me in my head because I remember the conversation, but that was many, many years ago. So, I think this council needs to decide, do we want to include building code enforcement officers as an option? It doesn't make them do it, obviously. It's something that their jurisdiction would have to choose to do. But oftentimes we'll do it. Someone builds a brand new home and their insurance company still wants a wind mitigation survey, even though the home was just built. Well, because we did the plan review and inspections, we'll actually fill out the form for them for free because we've seen everything throughout the process of the building of that home. But we also do it for existing homes as well, and we have to go through the same practices that a wind mitigation surveyor does, trying to verify as best they can what's there and what's not there. So, the question is one, as jurisdictional people, building code enforcement officers, should we continue that practice? And if we are, then we should probably define that in rule what it takes to do that. So that's kind of the background on the issue. Again, I'm good with whatever this council wants to do. If we want to keep it just as a private entity that people need to go to, or if we want to have that option to allow building code enforcement officers to do it. So that's kind of the background on the issue. At the end of the day, we just want to make sure people can get their wind mitigation surveys so that they can get the discounts they're entitled to.
Mr. Chair, I think it may be beneficial, since we have Ashley captive here, that he can give some thoughts on that. Now, while he is a third party, if you will, he seems to be very focused on the need for it across the board, and I don't think he cares whether the public guys do it or don't. I may be wrong, but he's very, very deeply ingrained in this ongoing conversation with the Department of Insurance and how these things come to be and the benefits of that. Ashley, can I get you to help a little bit here for some clarity?
Nothing like being put on the spot.
Shouldn't have showed up.
My favorite thing in the world is being voluntold.
Can you do it first and last name?
My
for the
name
record?
is Ashley Vandermeulen. I am a co-chair of the Wind Mitigation Task Force. We're under the Home Builders Association, technically under the Renovators Council. So I'll spare you all of that. We came up with Wind Mitigation Task Force. And my story is pretty simple. After Ida, I was thrown into all of this mess. My insurance company dropped me. I lost 12 shingles. I had $83,000 worth of damage. The SBA let me put the house back together, but I was thrown from $6,000 a year to $18,000 a year for wind insurance in 2 years, and I was like, yo, there has to be a better way. Then Fortified started coming into the market. Insurance carriers really liked the verification process. Bill is a home inspector. Bill Hatchett, he's a co-chair as well. He was sort of a forefather of home inspection and wind mitigation, if you will. So I called him and I said, Bill, I got to learn this wind mitigation stuff. I did all the books, but it didn't really teach me anything. So I sat with Bill for some time and learned the process. But the qualifications on the form and what you can actually sign, it seems as though a building official, an architect, an engineer, or someone with a special wind mitigation class can sign off on the form. And I think the skill set is there for all three. My goal in all of this and my hope is independent qualified verification. Contractors don't like supervision. They really hate it when the other person doesn't know what they're doing because it makes it painful for them. And I think it's a fair process to put folks in place who can do it. And I'm very much in favor, and I've talked with Bill and Bruce about this as well, about having those folks register as a wind mitigation surveyor and let them do it. Because talking with LDI, the dream is to have an app that wind mitigation surveyors have that we can enter all of this data by address and give an email and give a website to an insurance carrier coming into the market because we have 677,000 homes that aren't built to current code. I just sat with my insurance agent yesterday. Hurricane clips, secondary water barriers, the nail patterns, and brace gables. I mean, those were the 4 or 5 discount opportunities on Citizens, and of which I was able to save $1,500 and $2,500 depending on which policy I picked. So it's there and it's in place. I just think we need a uniformed approach to move forward because frankly, had we had any kind of teeth or any kind of enforcement in our wonderful building codes throughout Louisiana, Fortified might not have been necessary, and Ida might not have happened to me because I'd have had a secondary water barrier under on my roof. So these are. I'm a real person in this with a real house and a real desire to make this better. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks for hearing.
Thank you. I'm in agreement as well with Mr. Ashley and with Mr. Witch that I think in practice, a building official, building code enforcement officer could do these types of things in Louisiana. I believe the intent of it was that if you could regulate the construction of a roof system, of course, you could certify that it meets the building codes and this wind mitigation form that really falls in line with the high wind codes of the building codes. But I also agree that the rules as they currently stand do not provide clear evidence that that is an allowable practice. And so I would be very favorable for me to move forward with a rulemaking procedure to put in place a rule that would clarify that. I'd like to bring that before y'all at either the next meeting or the following for a little bit further discussion. But again, just to give you my intent now is to say that it makes very clear sense to me that a building official who can supervise the full inspection of a new roof or a new home should be able to certify that it meets the standards of a document, again, that falls very in line with the building code that was part of that process.
Mr. Chair, can I make an offer or suggestion?
Yes, sir.
If possible. If we could have hopefully some clear, short discussion today of what a proposed rule would be, we could have something ready for you in hopefully in the next couple of weeks that you could bless and we could move forth with at your next meeting. and I think Mr. Witch was very clear earlier, while a private inspector, which is our new term, by the way, third party sounds kind of funky to me. Let's say a private inspector has certain criteria. Y'all don't address at all the public side of the inspection process. If we could define who can do it, we can replace the existing Rule 705 with your new language, and hopefully within the next 4, 5, 6 months, we can get that defined clearly and everybody can move forth. That will help their task force, that will help LDI, that would help everybody. And I don't know that this is going to take a lot of discussion today, but the longer we delay it, as we mentioned earlier, the longer it's going to take to get done. If we can just have some ideas and we can get Tara to scribe some things down, that a public guy can be this, can be this, can be this, but they must register with the council, and a private guy can be this and this and this, and they must register with the council. That eliminates all the confusion moving forward, and we'll never have to address this again.
And I think it's relatively clear on this that it can be someone who's passed a B1 residential building certification, a certified building official, certified
Is it
residential
only,
inspector.
and excuse my ignorance of this, when you say B1, is that the only classification, or are there more?
That would be the only one for this specific conversation. So B1, E1, M1, P1 are all the residential classifications.
Okay.
And this is going to fall into the building component as it relates to the finding
Okay.
in the building itself. So that B1 would be there, that building official, that combination residential inspector, architect, engineer, and then in my opinion, I think we should keep the current home inspector with the wind mitigation course as well. I think we want to broaden this.
I'm good with all that, and actually, it's solely your decision, but it makes sense to me. But when you throw engineer in there, I always have to ask, what kind of engineer? Because we say engineer all the time through code.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that a civil engineer.
It's the structural, we need to clarify
Okay,
the structural
but that's what I'm
engineering.
asking for. We need some clarity on what type of engineer.
I agree. I'd like to get something from Mr. Landry on this.
Mr. Landerno actually is very versed in engineering, so he may help you with it.
So, does anybody, just in general, does anyone know what a structural engineer is? What is a structural engineer? A structural engineer is a civil engineer.
They're a division
okay?
of a civil engineer.
There's no such thing as a structural engineer. There's a civil engineer who specializes in structure. Okay, so the engineering does not license structural engineers; they license civil engineers. And so when you say you want a structural engineer, you're kind of invading what it is to define an engineer through that particular group of people. So there would have to be some working with the licensing portion of engineering as to whether or not what is defined as a structural engineer, what is not. And I don't know that we can do that, but we would, you might be able to say that you're going to require someone that at least specializes in that area, but there is no true definition of what the difference is between a civil engineer and a structural engineer. And so that's where you have to just be careful that we're not invading some other licensing group's area of expertise. This council can do certain things, but can you invade another board's area of licensing? That would be my only conversation there.
So this is very clearly defined through the fortified program, which type of which the engineer is allowed to sign the fortified certificate. So I really think we can go look at what they've done, because you want someone who has actually worked on your residential structures, because that's what they're going in to say, is that the structure will withstand up to a certain wind level. But we aren't completely reinventing the wheel. If we are going down the pathway of defining this, I think we can actually borrow from them pretty clearly.
Ms. Dedekus, if I could ask just for some clarity, if I understood you correctly, you said that fortified has got some sort of a definition, that it's an engineer that works on residential structures. How do y'all determine that when you grant such certifications? Is it you have to prove that you've done 7 residential structures, 100, within 5 years, within a year? Because that's where we're getting specific again, and before we know it, we're going to have another discussion about it.
So to give a little bit of the context around the wind mitigation inspection versus the fortified inspection, wind mitigation has primarily been used for existing structures as they come through a renovation on their roof, whereas while fortified can be used in some cases, it actually does not work if you have historic homes, there's all sorts of places where fortified can't get you to the other side of it. So wind mitigation inspection was created to try to help solve this problem, has not been updated in a long time. So actually part of this too is updating what we mean when we say a wind mitigation certificate in this state. On the fortified side, the structural engineer is actually the engineer that designed on the house, which is why the fortified costs are so much higher than the wind mitigation inspection costs. So part of the pushback, which I completely understand around us just saying fortified only, is that we're driving up the costs of getting your roof done because we're increasing the cost of actually hiring that engineer, which is not, I mean, until a few years ago, you didn't even really need an architect to build a house, right? And until last year, you didn't need a building permit to re-roof. So we're in this new space to define as a code council what we need. So I think that's a really good question, Brad, about how we pull it in. But in the fortified cases, you know the structural engineer was involved in the designing, and that's why the fortified certificate is so valuable, because the structural engineer's stamp is saying this is going to withstand it. So I think building code officials very clearly should be able to do wind mitigation inspections, because it's going back in and saying, hey, this house has been strapped properly. Probably a lot of civil engineers would be able to do that. I'd be surprised if a lot of civil engineers actually want to do the wind mitigation inspection, because you really don't make a lot of money doing it. That's part of why we created it, was to find a cheaper pathway for people to be able to certify their homes. But the value of having the engineer involved is really the value of the fortified certificate. So if we can, as a council, as we think this through, what it means, what the certificate captures, it also might help people to understand that in some cases, who signs that form can actually be more valuable than just the guy that kind of has a business card going around saying he can inspect your house.
And if I could just add on,
I think that you might ask some of the contractors here, but essentially, when you get a roofing inspection by an engineer, all you're going to get is a PE stamp. So it's not going to say, I'm a structural engineer, it's just going to be a PE stamp. And so that's typically what happens. And so you don't know that person is a structural engineer, electrical engineer, what chemical engineer, it's just going to be a PE stamp. It doesn't say structural. And so I don't know how we get into that point and how we go further with that.
Which is exactly what my question was when you
if I could
say
interject
engineer.
a little bit here, Brad, I'm
Sure.
going to disagree with you, sir. We just went through this extensively a few years ago in the legislature as we define what civil engineers are and their specialties. There was some open-endedness to what they could design as it relates to architectural structures as well. And I think our bigger concern in pointing to what Jackie was saying is that the term engineer is very open-ended. You have everything from mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, civil engineers with specialties in hydrology, structural, etc. But you can also get into petroleum engineers as well, chemical engineers, and we don't want to leave that term open-ended. The stamp does define what that individual is licensed to do, whether it may say it or not. That individual name is associated with what they're allowed to practice. And I would certainly not want to see a chemical engineer stamping a wind mitigation survey, because the term engineer is allowed to define them to do so. And so I think there's a way to narrow that focus. And I think if we're looking to define that with this council, then we should take that energy to do that.
And all I could offer to you, Mr. Embaugh, I appreciate your input. I think we're actually on the same page here, is it has to have some meaning. And if you just leave it open to everything, where are we at? Certainly that discussion is above anything that I understand with engineering. Maybe y'all could offer some language to us, and if we could have that. I don't mind doing some work, but I don't know what the heck y'all are talking about. And I think most of us don't.
I believe we have somebody in the audience who wants to.
Mr. Ashley?
So I'm not an engineer, but I worked for one for 20 years, and I actually think the answer lies in the engineering's code of ethics. Is where that language is going to be. And I just looked up fortified. They do not define a structural engineer. They define a professional engineer. And the gist is they have to be licensed by a board, and they have to show relative experience, which is, I think, very similar to what the engineering code of ethics says. I do fortified and wind mitigations because I have no idea which way Louisiana is going to go with this, and I'm a businessman. But bottom line is, I think that's where that language lies. I encourage you to stay away from the word structure because that doesn't exist. It's a marketing term, if you will.
Mr. Witch?
Yeah, I do think, we do need to find a better way to define it. I can tell you my own personal experience. I had issues with an engineer one time just on a design of a structure and doing our research. This engineer was a licensed mechanical engineer, and when I talked to the board that governs the engineers, I asked them, hey, can this person legally do this work? And their answer was they can do anything they believe they're qualified to do, which I think is not great. But, so that I think we should definitely define. I do agree with Jackie. I don't think there's a lot of engineers knocking down the door to do wind mitigation surveys. Mr. Ashley, a lot of good information today, but I do want to contradict one thing that you said, or two things actually. One, I believe re-roof permits were always required in the state of Louisiana, but we needed a law to make that clear to our elected officials. Two, while enforcement may have been lacking in some areas, not everywhere. So I get very frustrated. I hear LDI saying that. I hear other people saying that. And while that is the case, it is not a statewide issue. There are certain areas where enforcement was lacking.
Any other comments?
Again, may I offer a suggestion?
Always.
Perhaps Mr. Embaugh and Ms. Datticus and Mr. Witch could conspire to put a few minutes together to propose a rule.
Rejected.
Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion.
I'm going to counter that, saying that y'all are on this council based upon your professional education and experience. I'm a dumb redneck cop, so you don't want me writing rules about engineering because you won't like them. But if Mr. Embaugh doesn't want to participate, perhaps some others, and I know you're kidding, Fritz, but if you guys could put something together for us, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we could get it to the council for further discussion, and hopefully you can vote on adoption of such rule next month, so the public can see it maybe by August.
I think that's quite doable. It also meets me pulling together a fortified report by March deadline, so.
There we go.
You guys are voluntold.
Perfect.
I'm happy, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment from commission?
I do.
Oh, thank you. I'm Bill Hatch. I'd like to be recognized. I'm past chair of the State Board of Home Inspectors. I got involved in wind mitigation and all kinds of stuff after Hurricane Katrina, and in and out of all the damages. Put together a group of inspectors and engineers. We went in and did all the FEMA damages assessments after that to help everybody get started in building. I want to talk specifically about wind mitigation surveys. I am home inspector, first registered wind mitigation surveyor. I want to talk about wind mitigation surveyors. I'm not Morris Bart, but I want to make a Morris Bart type statement, which is wind mitigation surveys is a Louisiana solution to a Louisiana problem, which is the increasing rates of homeowners insurance. And I can tell you, and I've got the data to support it, which anybody wants to say it, I'll be happy to give you some afterwards. But I can guarantee you that the wind mitigation survey program has saved Louisiana homeowners hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last year since it's been created, because of the decreased amounts that they're having to pay for their homeowners insurance. Now that's dependent on, first of all, you got to have a wind mitigation survey. Hopefully you have it by have a survey done by someone who has had some certifications and education to know what they're doing, and they have the experience to know how to fill those forms out. I hate to use the words creative writing, but sometimes when you're filling these forms out, you have to know creative writing to be able to make sure that the underwriters off there somewhere in the never to read these reports, to know what in the world they got in order for the homeowners to get the correct credits that they should get. But I can tell you that the Louisiana homeowners are getting tremendous savings. Just recently, last few days, I got one case in, and homeowner had gotten, I think, something like $6,600 a year in credits. And you get these credits every year. That's the beautiful thing about this. You get these credits every year. I highly recommend it. And of course, some people will ask you, well, what's the fee? It's an open market. The fee generally, just the going market pretty much is about $300. Sometimes there'll be more. If I have to travel to Timbuktu to go do one, I'm going to charge a little extra for travel. But pretty much the going market is about $300, and that's what most of those surveyors that do. And but anyway, I highly recommend that this be done. This is a tremendous program, and I've been here since the beginning. I'm I guess I'm first chair of the State Board of Home Inspectors. I think about it, reappointed a couple times by a couple different governors to keep that thing going. But I heavily got involved with the wind mitigation, and I am a big believer in it. So if you know of anybody, and also sometimes people ask what insurance companies are better than the others. Anybody has USAA, of course you have to have that military connection at some point, but USAA they do very well. When we see stuff comes back at least 20-30%, sometimes 40-50%, even more, sometimes reducing those annual premiums. So there are other companies that do well, but by law, any company that does business in Louisiana, as for insurance, they have to give credits, and those credits can be found. The LDI has that information, and but if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to. I've been around since the beginning. I'm a fly on the wall, by the way. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to have at them.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you for coming and giving us that context. And as a board, traditionally, it's a new board, so we're going to feel this out and see how everyone feels this time. We've always been huge fans of the wind mitigation inspection as an option. And to Mr. Ashley's comment, have very intentionally tried not to take a position so that the market can determine what's best and homeowners can determine what's best for their structures. So we've known for a minute that we needed to update the standard, but we have always really supported it. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I did want to ask a question. I'm right here.
No.
So if an individual has a house and it's worth $100,000 and they don't have insurance because they own the house, how has it been treated for them to put a new roof? And they have a blue tarp on their house? How do they benefit from a wind survey? Because they don't have insurance, so they're not going to get a credit, and they're not going to lower their insurance. But the new with the wind survey and going through that process, it's going to cost because they got to do because they have to put on a different type of roof. How does it benefit? So just explain to the board.
Well, benefit as a wind mitigation surveyor, we're going to go in and do an assessment on the home. It takes about an hour or less to do so. Take a look at it and take a look at the features of the home. Homes that are better designed and built are going to have less severe damages in high wind events such as hurricanes. And so as a result of that, normally, again, you have to get to the key thing. You have to have insurance, okay? But if you have insurance, because of that, you're going to get a reduction in your homeowner's insurance. And I can guarantee you that I've seen huge numbers. Recently got one, I think, called in we always ask the homeowners to give us the information so we can try to keep an ongoing total of what's going on. They frequently don't do it, but I know I got calls within the last few days. Somebody's getting $6,600 a year in credits, and that's not the first time. There's other ones, but anyway. So it gives you a really good idea. But I do have data. Anybody wants to see it?
Mr. Witch?
So, Mr. Landrino, just to expand on your question, in the event that there is no savings for them to be gained by insurance because they don't have it or need it, that's where getting the building permit and the inspections that go along with that, although you won't get a discount, you will have the peace of mind that it was installed as per code and done correctly before you pay your contractor who did it. Correct.
The voluntary database, if they volunteer to do it, which we're going to discuss shortly.
And it's carrot, not stick. It's not mandated to be done. It's only for beneficial for the user themselves to determine what they find its value to be. All right, if there's nothing more, I do want to move on. I know that this has the potential to drag on with the revised statute, so I would like us to go ahead and move on to agenda item H. If there's no other comments from the public. All right, so proposed revised statutes. Mr. Hassert. I'd like to talk about deadlines and those sorts of things specifically.
Again, to kind of mimic Mr. Ambaugh, no. I don't want to talk about this with y'all. This is going to be a long, lengthy conversation. There are a lot of opinions in here, and while everyone's entitled to them, I would just like to begin with this. This proposed legislation is big. It's lengthy. There's a lot of repeal and replace. There's a lot of what the heck were they thinking to fix. There's a lot of things from 20-something years ago that have not been updated or changed. And there is a deadline. And that deadline to file, early filing, I believe, is the 27th of this month. If we don't get something finished and filed, you're not going to get a whole lot done this year, if anything. This discussion has the potential to go on and on and on and on. I would suggest and ask that we do not get down into the weeds about punctuation and spelling. That I've seen that happen before. There are some major components that I think that we've all talked about in past discussions or past meetings of things that need to be addressed in generality and in whole. And there's some pipe dream stuff, and as Mr. Bruce told me that I'm way up in the sky on a few of these things, but they need to be discussed. One of the major things that I continue to deal with and harp on is the inability to regulate or discipline your building officials of any kind. This council seems to have some different opinions as to whether they should be or shouldn't be disciplined. I can tell you that if you read the newspaper about bad acts, corrupt acts by building officials, they're full of them. Everybody points to New Orleans. It's not just New Orleans. It's Baton Rouge. It's Shreveport. It's Monroe. It's Bunkie. It's everywhere. The idea in my mind is not to punish a building official for missing something or making a mistake. It is to punish in some sort of way or sanction a building official who doesn't do the inspection or who purposely ignores something, or that there's some type of challenging relationship between the contractor and the building official, if you will, the inspector. That is the purpose of the draft that you have that was mostly Tara's work. I'd like to take credit for some of it, but I didn't. And there's a lot of things that we need to work through there. We felt as if that the easiest way to get a hold of that and give you the ability to handle a building official who's not acting properly is to actually make them a license versus a registration and put them under Title 37, the occupational licensing standards. We borrowed some language from contractor law. Some of you are contractors. I've had some conversation with a couple of y'all. You didn't seem to have any struggles with it, because it's the same standards that we put in place for contractors that we're trying to put in place for building officials. And truly, all that it comes down to is follow the rules, whatever they are, be honest, don't steal from people and do what you're paid to do. One of the struggles that has not been addressed quite yet in your draft is the relationship of private inspectors with the contractor. I think we talked about that in the past. I know Mike and I have talked about that. Nick and I have talked about that. Contractors, they like that relationship now, but they also recognize the challenges that go along with that. Currently, the way that I understand that it works is a contractor can pick up the phone and call his buddy, the private party inspector, pass his stuff, send it on to the parish. That's a business relationship. There's no benefit and there's no expectation of the inspector to actually do the work or to do the work properly. Hence, we've had all these other cases that have turned into criminal matters where people have been, they've been taken advantage of. It has been my position at the contractors board, and it is my position today that third party is, or private, however you would like to term that, is an important part of what y'all do. I think it's integral. I think it's going to continue to grow. Nick doesn't like to hear me say it, but I think it is actually the future of this profession, if you will. A private inspector should be contracted to the municipality for they are representing the municipality. The municipality should order the inspection through either its public inspectors or its contracted private inspecting company or private inspection individual, either on a contract basis or a rotation basis, however that municipality chooses to do it. But I do not believe that it is proper and nowhere near ethical that the contractor calls his buddy to say, I passed. They're not doing the work, y'all. Y'all know that already. Some of them may, but just as in everything else, the bad actions of two or three are destroying the reputation of that whole group. So let's clean it up. Mike obviously is a representative of South Central who does a phenomenal job of everything they do. In my years at the board and handle enforcement of the board, we never had problems with anything they did. Never. Even when we thought we got them, we didn't have them. But we can go to a lot of the other inspection companies that are predominant in the state, and it's been proven time and time again, they're not doing the inspection. They're taking the money, they're signing off on it, they don't even go. It's consistent. That's one of the major changes that I would like to see y'all consider, allowing us to put some language in there that while third parties may be allowed at the discretion of the municipality, if a third party is allowed, they have to follow the rules of that municipality as far as their processes and procedures. Ms. Juliet and Jefferson is having a struggle with that right now. And I'm sorry for calling you out, but it was recent. You guys at the municipal level have to get a hold and have the authorities to handle the people that work for you on your behalf. The other part of that is the inspectors, third party, private, however you want to term that again, they need to be firmly in contract with you so you can handle the disciplinary action of those guys. And that would be removing them from the ability to work in your parish or your city or your town. Pat McCormick's a dear friend of mine. If I was a building inspector, I can promise you Pat's going to use me. Now, y'all know me and my ethics. I'm going to go out and inspect everything that he does, and I'm going to fail him if necessary, right? That's not going to happen, y'all, and that's not happening now. And that is what's brought to light this big challenge that you're faced with. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. The other things we're talking about, which are not necessarily, well, we handled one of my notes, the wind mitigation mess. We're working on that already. In no particular order, one of the things, and PJ can help me here if he wants to. I think he will leave me hanging, but I'll be all right. We're clear that our insurance companies don't have any data to determine what our actual risks are. We've had some broad discussions about mandatory reporting of permits and inspections for different types of work to be determined by you. You can't do that today. It's impossible to do today. There's no authority of the council to collect that data, to submit that data. I think all of you are aware that there are certain municipalities that their permit system is less than robust on a piece of paper, maybe. Real. That's real, y'all. That's real. Nobody's keeping these records for any period of time. There's a municipality within about 100 miles from here that as soon as that that structure gets occupancy, they throw it away. I've just seen some raised eyebrows, but that happens as well. I would like to see you mandate reporting of certain types of inspections permits and the inspections thereafter, so we can provide that data to the insurance company. I told y'all a few times in the past, and I think that we're all starting to see that pretty clearly. You are a public policy body at this point, and what you do can affect everybody's insurance rates and the way that we're viewed. I've seen the studies that say Louisiana has some very strong building codes that I don't remember the exact data, but we're very near the bottom several years past. We're very near the top now, but there's no enforcement and there's no data collection. So of what value is our code if we can't prove we're doing it right to those that need to see it to make the decisions about our finances and our economics? With that being said, we go back to the same thing that I joke about, but I'm serious about. You have no money to do anything. I would suggest and like to see that you put in legislation some kind of way that of the building permits that you're going to monitor or collect the data on, that you assess a fee to fund the board's or the council's operation, if you will. That number is up in the air because we don't know the number of permits that is out there. That's some tricky language we're going to have to work through. The other thing that we'd all talked about, or at least I've talked about, which is kind of what Mr. Bruce called my in the sky dream, a centralized permitting system that is monitored by the council, that is controlled by the council. And while we say everybody has to use it, I know that there are some arguments against that from some of the bigger municipalities and private entities that they already have spent millions of dollars on something in place. Just let that system feed into the data reporting that is required. That's the biggest things that I think that we're looking at in our legislative changes. Ideally, you would like to stand up such a system tomorrow, but you can't because you don't have any money. So we have to gather some money, then we have to develop a system, then we have to be able to pay for it. So again, this is where I think it's important that you start considering some funding at this point as well. Not less important, but of a side note, currently your statutes say that you're supposed to provide training to building officials of the upcoming codes. I don't know that you've ever done that. If you have, I'm unaware of it, but I don't know how you're doing it when nobody has any money. So
That's provided by EDNR. They changed their name. So
what is EDR?
It used to be Department of Natural Resources and then became...
Is now Conservation and Energy.
Thank you. They provide the code cycle training review in conjunction with us through
To
licensing.
who?
To code officials, and if there's extra space, the contractors.
Mark maybe can help me with that, but the building officials I spoke to said they don't receive training.
Mr. Roberts?
So, Mark Roberts, International Code Council. Just to be clear, what's happened with the Code Council in the past, the administrator would reach out to certain individuals that were in the electrical industry, say, or in the building industry, and would actually hold classes, and it was usually for free. So it was nothing consistent. It was never like on a certain time schedule. The most of what they provided that I recall was electrical code, but every once in a while there would be some other training as well. So it's been, again, as you said, they didn't have any money in order to do it, and they didn't have the legal ability to collect funds to pay for a training. So that's all I wanted to add.
Ms. Witch?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think most of the training in the past has either been provided by the Building Officials Association or individual building officials providing it to their particular jurisdiction as far as what the significant changes were. So Mark is correct. There have been some classes throughout the years by the LSU CCC, but nothing consistent that you could depend on. And while this body, we'll probably still have to contract with somebody to put the classes on, whether that be Bowl or ICC or some other entity. I do think, especially when we're adopting new codes, or updated codes, I should say, it would go a long way. I know I have given classes in the past to jurisdictions that I'm not responsible for simply because they asked, and that's not always the best either, because then you create conflict between the way you see it and the way their particular building official sees it. So, I would love for this council, when we adopt updated codes, to be able to consistently provide that training across the state, not only to code officials but also to contractors. One reason why I always did the classes for the contractors was because at the end of the day, it makes my job easier if they understand what those requirements are. So, but I agree, you need some money to do that, because Bowl's not going to do it for free, and neither is anybody else.
Well, and Mike, I appreciate your comments on that, and it just mirrors my point, and Mr. Roberts as well. It's been a string and a prayer, and this industry has counted on the goodwill of some, and some have benefited from it, and some have not. But no matter what we end up with, this is supposed to be a uniform process. And just the way it's been described, it's the furthest from uniform. And you have the ability to change that moving forward. And Mr. Witch is correct. It is probably going to require a vendor of some sort to provide that training. But you can't do that at this point. And if you get the ability to do that, the legal ability to do that, and the financial ability to do that, it's easy to accomplish. And maybe at that point, you might want to consider, not for this session certainly, you may want to consider some documentation of that training to be able to keep up their certifications or their registration. Again, just my perspective of the building official inspection industry, half of y'all do a great job and you care. The other half are problematic, and y'all know that. Whether you admit it or not, you know that. So it's up to you to raise their standards. And this is just one way that I'm suggesting that you consider doing that. Other than that, you've got our very rough draft. I don't know that there's anything so much challenging. Oh, there is one thing. I'm sorry. I know what we had put in the draft was a fee for all inspectors. After some discussion about that and some thoughts we had in the last few days, I think we should consider waiving all fees for public inspectors. So if you are employed by a public body, to waive all types of registration or licensing fees, if you will, but they would still apply to the private individuals. And that's something that you guys are going to have to tell us what you want. So I hope that y'all read this or taken a look at it. I know you did, Mike. I know you did word for word. But I don't think that everybody else has probably taken as a detailed look at it as you did. So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to give it back to you for some discussion points so we can scribble some notes and get something back to you. Again, the timing of this is crucial. You will not meet again. So maybe you want a small committee, to name a small committee to review and make recommendations to move forth or not. And we can report back at the next meeting. If there's something that the council strongly disagrees with, we can make modifications to that bill up until the point that it is signed by or it is passed through the House and Senate.
Absolutely. I think that we need to establish a legislative committee specifically to look at this. I think that their recommendation needs to be something that put forward to yourself, Mr. Hassett, and your staff. And like I said, I also think discussion is valuable as well. I think that as we find ourselves in a new place now with some codes we're kind of under the gun for, some legislation we're kind of under the gun. Just for the board's sake, the end of February, completed document needs to be submitted for legislature. So we are in a very tight time crunch, and I realize this is a draft document, but I feel like its intent is very clear, and we can accomplish it with some. I got an email this morning that said it just needs a little wordsmithing, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. And so I would like to establish a committee, legislative committee, and then have them make recommendation directly to the staff to move forward. And we can discuss this throughout our process as we need to make amendments, but we need to get a relatively complete bill filed it's necessary.
Mr. Chair, if I could add, I'm sorry.
Sure.
While I agree with everything that you said, I also think that we should consider the fact that the minute that we file this, that we start looking at next year, so we are not in this same time crunch again. And I can tell you, again, my only point of reference is that of the Contractors Board. We review legislation all year long. We have a bill this year. It's very small. I can tell you last year it was not, but it took a long time to put that together. 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whichever it was not. If you can get a good framework in here now, you can fine-tune things and we can be ready to go, and we can hash out all the differences between the industry groups, et cetera, in advance, and we can sail through. I know Michelle was here. Michelle Shirley's here from, she's the lobbyist for the home builders, and she doesn't know what I'm going to say, as she often doesn't, but it's been the last couple of years that we've actually had the home builders support our bill because we took the opportunity to work with them in advance instead of one side or the other making demands at the last minute. Communication is absolutely the key, and you just on a very short timetable with the creation of this new council in August, not meeting until September. Everybody's still trying to get their feet wet where they are. Y'all just started talking today. Thank you again for that. We got to do this together. Staff, you mentioned staff, that's Tara and me. That's all you got. I don't use him a lot. He's extremely expensive. I am a whiner. When it comes to money that does not exist, I am absolutely a whiner. And Kevin's worth all the money, but the problem is I can't have him on staff. And we can't have him here all day. So we have to do a lot of this work. And Tara and I are doing that work, but we have other responsibilities statutorily as well. So the legislative committee is crucial to the success of this, not only this year, but in the future. Again, my whole point of that very long oratory there is you got to lay your foundation and your framework today so we can clean up the things that we've missed or we haven't had the opportunity to get to in the future.
Thank you. And I'm in complete agreement with that. I think that's needed to be an active committee consistently throughout, and that their recommendation would come before the council for discussion as well once we get this framework established so that we can have these bills. And we want to make sure we meet with all of our stakeholders, the public, the building officials, the contractors, all of this, because I think it's important as we progress through this. Jim, do you have a question?
I do have a question. I agree with what you're saying, Brad, as well as what you're saying, Nick. I'm just a little concerned with the timing of it. There's a lot of heavy lift going on currently with everybody on this council reviewing all the codes that also have to be kind of put in place. So I had kind of a two-part question here. I recognize the need to make the early filing deadline at the end of the month, but certainly that's not the deadline that we can put a bill out. And I'd be hesitant to put all of that burden on a committee without the full support of the council, since the full support of the council are the ones that have to act by that statute. So is there an opportunity for us to put some legislation forward or have a committee review something and then present it at the next council and still beat a bill file deadline for one?
Ms. Shirley, are you aware of the absolute drop dead date for filing a bill? Could you help me?
Yes.
While she's looking that up, the next thing I would ask is, do we feel it's wholly important to rebuild this entire statute this year? Or can we kind of, for lack of better putting, cherry pick a couple of key things, like the funding mechanism clearly is something we need to put in place.
What would you take out, Mr. Embaugh?
I honestly, full disclosure, I haven't even looked at it yet because I just got it yesterday.
Yeah.
And so, and that's my concern, is that I need some time to digest some stuff like this to be able to understand it. Because this is my first year on this code, council. And so I need to know a little bit more about the operational needs of what we need before I could put support behind anything that would go in place.
So the second deadline is March 31st. Another suggestion would be maybe the fees or something that everybody agrees with, go ahead and file that bill, and you could always amend that one as we work the language, and then you have the couple of months that we can all keep talking. That's another suggestion.
It's up to y'all, whatever you want to do. I'm just concerned, and look, I'm just going to say this. At some point, we have to move forward And y'all are going to have some belief in the staff that is representing y'all's wishes, which is why I'm talking about this. You as a council are so hamstrung in your ability to take action because of your current statutory language. That's why we're late. That's why we're late in everything. There's no secret agenda. I think we've laid it all out for you. It's whatever the council wishes to do. If you don't want to file a bill this year, that's perfectly fine with me. If you want to file it in part, that's fine. Somebody's got to tell me what to write, and we've been talking about this for a while, and we're just up against the wall now. So whatever you guys want to do, and girls, I'm sorry, I'm open to it. I don't have any hesitation at all of delaying and not doing the early filing. My concern with if not getting as much in as we possibly can early is we're going to be fighting at the table about the language the day before we go to the committee.
And I'm fully supporting of a kind of a subcommittee of this council to address this specifically.
Sure.
As long as I'm not on that subcommittee. So,
and like I said, I would like to move forward with this as quickly as possible, with the understanding that we can certainly amend this bill.
Absolutely.
And that we would have a subcommittee for this specifically. I just don't want to be fighting about it again at the last deadline. I'd rather start fighting now.
And again, Mr. Chair,
but I want to get things filed.
The only thing that I'm really asking you to consider, let's put forth as much as we can that we can agree on.
I agree.
I also agree with trying to get something in specifically around fees, and I also think the disciplinary process has been highlighted a number of times of trying to get something at least negotiated through that committee. If I were to pull something out, I would be very careful about making any amendments to what is the defined code, if only because I've been through this process now in which we've actually brought in new codes in the last 3 years, and it is the third rail when we get to the legislature.
I'm sorry, Ms. Dedekis, just for clarity, when you're saying code, you're talking about the building codes.
The building codes itself.
That's not on the agenda. That's not in anything that we're looking at changing.
This is where I think I read this last night, and because it's not a red line of our existing revised statutes, I think there's some areas actually that create ambiguity about, and believe me, I'm the first one who wants to be able to move this code process faster, and I would not touch that section in trying to get fees and disciplinary done. I would try to do the fees and disciplinary this year and come back around next year when we have a better, so the definitions section, there's a section 42. Sorry. Nope. Is it section 42? Let me find it. Section 48, I'm sorry. And it defines the current codes we look at, but it also has a line that says construction codes under the council's purview may be subject to change by rule. I think this is an entirely new section because I could not find, and I haven't had much time this morning to go back to my revised statutes. I also find the revised statutes very confusing because of the way they go in order. But that last line, construction codes under the council's purview may be subject to change by rule, is borderline nuclear in my experience with the legislature. So I would stay away from doing anything like that this year and try to push through our disciplinary and fees.
And then I think, again, that's why you need a committee to move this forward.
I'll establish that committee.
She said 48.
Yes, sir, Mr. Witch.
First, I volunteer to serve on that committee.
You said you are volunteer or not volunteering?
I am volunteering to serve on it. And, I don't know what the will is, do we want to bring up questions or concerns today? Do we save it for the committee? I guess that's what I'm trying to understand, because there are some things in here where I think I understand the intent and agree with the intent, but there's just a few small changes I think that need to be made to make it clear. Like, for instance, when you're defining the private inspector, for both the company and the inspector itself, it says to act in the capacity of a building official or inspector. They never have the ability to act as the building official right now.
And again, Mr. Witch, not to cut you off, that's why it's a draft. That's why I'm asking for y'all's input in this.
Right.
We know there's some things in there that need to be clarified and cleaned up. Y'all know this industry way better than I do, way better than Tara does by far. That's why we're looking for some guidance in here.
That's their sole purpose.
So I guess that's, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm just kind of asking for, what are you wanting to do today? Do we want everyone to kind of go through and voice what their issues may or may not be, or are we just saving it all for the committee?
I don't know that it would be super productive today for everyone to voice that opinion, especially with just getting the document. I think that would be something for the committee itself. And I think that if we could get comments into Tara specifically prior to those committee meetings, it would make it a lot more productive in that sense as well. So that's what I would ask of this council too. If you have comments, I mean, surely you did, to submit those to Tara.
Do we want to establish a specific deadline for comments to Ms. Rivette to be provided to the committee?
We certainly can establish that.
I think that's the only way you're going to move it.
And I think given the interest of trying to get something filed by the end of the month, I would suggest Monday the 9th.
Yeah.
That gives the remainder of this week, the weekend if you have nothing else fun to do, to make your review and provide those specific comments to Ms. Rivette that she can put in a form to be provided to the committee.
And I think that should be more than sufficient. We still got to establish committees, set timelines, advertise, those kinds of things. So I think that's a great idea. We'll try and get comments in by no later than close of business on the 9th, directly to Ms. Rivette. Ms. Rivette, do you have any comments about that? Okay, on your end?
Oh, she's in.
Yes, sir. Mr. Ashley.
Sorry, this is probably more ignorance on my part, but does stuff like this go to a public review? Will the wind could the wind mitigation task force get an email to you or something that says we'd like to review this or look at it? Is there a public comment period, I guess, for
This goes
this?
before the full state legislature.
Okay.
So there is indeed a public
Committee,
comment and review there.
vote the whole
It will
bit.
be published.
All right.
That's correct.
So what we've done always in the past is that as statutes are revised, they go from this board, they go to the legislative committees, and in the legislative committees, there are public comment periods. You'll receive a notice and you can go make public comment. The statutes don't typically come before our boards for public comment. They go to the legislature because it's a statutory change.
All right, is there any more comment on this from the council itself? Mr. Dacus?
How are we setting the committee? Can I volunteer as well to be on the committee?
You can certainly volunteer. I'll put together and I'll push out an email to everyone, let them know.
So, Mr. Chairman, first, there's been a motion, I think, about a deadline to submit comments. The proper way to do it is, I would suggest, is that a motion has been made, it needs to be second, then it needs to be approved.
Second.
Okay.
I think you really need it as a motion form instead of a suggestion to begin with.
Okay. I would like to make a motion that the board members provide any of their specific comments or things that they would like additional review of the proposed legislation be provided to Ms. Rivette by end of business on Monday, February 9th, 2026.
I second.
Seconded by Mr. Clark. All right, roll call. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
If you're going to make, also, if you're going to be creating a subcommittee for review, that again has to go by a motion and seconded and go through the process.
We certainly can. I don't think there's any opposition to creating that. I think that we could do it at discretion of the chairman, but we certainly can do that. Can I get
Yeah, and if it is by the discretion of chairman, it just needs to be made as before, so it's on the record that you've done that.
I'm making said motion that I'm creating a legislative committee to comment specifically on legislation and move forward with this session and future sessions as well.
And then just say how many you'd like to have on the commission as well, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to establish a minimum of 5 on the committee.
I make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We can vote on it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Wonderful. Any public comment? Anything else we need to discuss today? Mr. Roberts?
I just have a question, just for clarity. So this committee will report back to the full council at the next council meeting, and then the council will determine from there, or it's just they're going to make it on their own?
This committee will report to the executive staff of the Code Council to move forward and this council as we look to amend legislation with the expectation of submission for the early filing deadline.
At the next meeting?
Yes,
No.
I expect to have them reporting at the next meeting, and I expect by the next meeting to have.
I'm just trying to see when you would make a determination. Would it be at the next meeting? I mean, that's the bottom line.
Actually, that it will be submitted before the next
Correct. The
meeting.
submission takes place, and we have the ability to amend that bill as well
Okay.
on our end prior
Thank
to
you.
committees and everything established in the state legislature. Mr. Ashley?
Just for clarity, I had some comment on confusion, but the intent of our task force is to seek a separate license for the wind mitigation surveyor, be it a public official, current code counsel, architect or engineer, or a home inspector, but allow those four to do the inspections, but then we're going to define a class and define other credentials. And that's specific in licensing. We're not looking to become code inspectors. We're looking to do a subset under re-roof and specifically wind mitigation.
Exactly, and that'll come under our rulemaking procedure, so a little bit separate of a process.
And that's what I was going to suggest as well. The things that Ashley is mentioned and that we have discussed earlier, those are things to be defined by rule. We're looking specifically for this committee to address statutory changes, and rule we'll deal with when we get to rule. But and I think that's what I don't remember who, but several people were going to help formulate a rule to be presented at the next council meeting in regard to the wind mitigation clarity.
Yep, absolutely, that's correct. All right, let's move on to
Question.
I'm sorry.
So
Go
we
ahead, Mr.
voted just now to form a 5-member committee that's going to submit statutes before our next meeting?
That is going to review the proposed statutes to be submitted for the pre-filing, understanding that we can amend that filing.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Ms. Hazard, do you have anything else on the staff report?
No, sir. Your staff's doing as much as they could possibly do. I just need some
And thank you.
information forthcoming from y'all as to what you would like us to do.
So, any public comment before we move for a motion to close? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry, Mr. Witch.
Just real quick, when do you expect to form the committee?
2 days.
Okay.
I move to adjourn.
A second.
Second to Ms. Clark. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Mike.